And we are live. Welcome to the Second Chance Live series. I'm your host, Darryll Stinson, and I'm excited to introduce you to my new friend, Brenda Warren. She is a retired United States Marine speaker, entrepreneur, life and business strategist. After traveling the world for over 30 years, teaching others about leadership, self-care, cultivating healthy relationships, and spiritual growth, all of this will be put to the test when Brenda had a mental breakdown in 2013 while serving as director of environmental services at a hospital. Diagnosed with post traumatic stress disorder and military sexual trauma in 2011, she was overmedicated, unheard by doctors and family. Their one size fits all approach to her care left her desperate to find her voice and solutions to her ongoing issues, including chronic pain disorders. Sounds just like me. Brenda now supports businesses and individuals to find their voices. She teaches her tap-in method using a mind, body, and soul approach to help people show up and power up in their unique way to live a well-balanced life. Brenda shares her message across the country. She has been featured on the Tanya Bardo Angels United podcast, the Brooklyn Cafe TV show, where she is currently the host of the Editor's Desk. So, you guys join me in welcoming my new friend, Brenda, and I encourage you right now to host a watch party if you're watching on Facebook. That will notify everyone that this is a message worth living to. Brenda and I are going to be talking about true mental health challenges and battles. We were on the phone discussing some things, and one of the things we talked about was just how needed this conversation is, and that there's people who want to sugarcoat it and they don't want to talk about the real thoughts that go on in our head sometimes. And so we're going to have real talk today. I know it's the middle of the day, but I'd rather address something now than wait to nighttime when people are on the verge of giving in and quitting. So this is going to be one that you're not just going to want to watch now, but you're going to want to save this in your toolbox to send to people. Especially if you have a hard time reaching them. Sometimes it takes people who've been through that darkness to speak to that darkness. So go ahead. If you're watching on another platform other than Facebook, go ahead and click the share button and drop us some comments in the chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. Let us know if you have any questions. We'll be happy to field those questions. So that's my commercial for today. Brenda, talk to us. Tell them a little bit about your journey.
Well, Darryll, like you said, I was living my best life and still ministering, preaching, teaching, serving, just going about my business. And my job was really stressful. So there was this one particular person that was just always pushing my buttons. There's always that one.
Always that one.
Always that one. And one day she pushed them just a little bit too far, and I started having flashbacks. That was unfortunate for her. But that was the first sign of the crack in my armor where I knew I was no longer able to keep all my trash in one bag. But being who I wasn't trying to hear it. I was in big denial. So I just kind of ignored it. But the flashbacks and the nightmares started coming pretty hot and heavy. And I couldn't ignore it. So I drove to the Durham VA to get some help. And I met this gentleman named Ari who asked me, had I ever heard of PTSD? I hadn't.
Wow, really?
But I hadn't. I mean, I lived a pretty charmed life. I was married, my child, had the job of my dreams, worked with and for some pretty fabulous people for the most part. So I was just doing my thing. I retired after 20 years in the Marine Corps active duty. And although I had the chronic pain issue because of some situations that happened when I was in Somalia, I still was doing pretty good. But when this happened, it got really crazy really fast. Really fast. And I was ashamed when I realized that things, I wasn't hitting on all cylinders. So
right.
I went to get the help, but once they told me what it was, I decided that they didn't know what they were talking about because I'm fine. And I ignored it. I didn't take the medication at first, but then it came a time where I needed the medication. So I took the medication. That was a mistake. In the sense that being military, you have a tendency to do what you're told. I
Hmm.
didn't ask questions. I didn't
Hmm.
self advocate. So they gave me too much medication, which put me in the hospital. And I didn't tell my husband that I had been diagnosed. I didn't tell my friends, didn't tell my pastor. I told
Why?
no one
Why?
because I'm a Marine. Marines don't do that.
Mm,
You don't, you don't show weakness.
right.
Besides, I was a director in charge of 4 departments,
Yeah.
120 employees. Who's going to keep somebody on the job when you can't keep it all together mentally? I was
Right.
afraid of losing my employment. I was afraid of losing my marriage. I felt broken and I was really ashamed.
Mm, mhm,
So I hid it.
mhm.
And by the time I got to the place where I know I couldn't hide it anymore, I reached out for help and I said, "Look, guys," and I said the words, "I am suicidal. Help me." But everybody turned a blind eye because although I felt that way, I was high functioning. I was getting all
Right.
my reports done. The only people that really knew I was having a real problem was my direct personal assistants who were covering for me. I literally walk out on stage, give a speech, talk to all employees, and then go in my office and have a meltdown, and they would guard my door.
Wow.
So I had some enablers that allowed me to continue to function at a level that allowed me to hide the cracks in my armor. But then I couldn't hide them, and I requested to take 30 days off so that I could check myself in for care.
Hmm.
But the people I worked for didn't want to do that. They thought that was unnecessary because I was just basically going through a phase, had
Hmm.
no clue,
Yeah.
but it was real.
Yeah. I love to go there for a minute, and this is we're getting ready to really get into it because you know I've had similar scenarios happen, and they see me being charismatic, upbeat
Mhm.
person, and they assume that it's under your control completely. And I'm not saying that there's not methods that we can learn, or else you and I wouldn't be advocates and teach and things like that. But sometimes it is. I can't remember who I was talking to, but they had said, "Well, I feel like you're just allowing yourself to feel that way." I would love for you to speak to what does it really feel like to be battling suicidal ideations?
I often would say to the people around me, "You guys, I am drowning in plain sight." Do you understand
Mhm,
what I'm talking? With no life preserver in sight.
mhm.
But they would just watch me do my thing. And I said, do my thing because I was still preaching.
Yep.
I was still telling everybody how good God is. And I will still tell everybody how good God is because God is good.
Mhm.
I was still teaching. I was still functioning. I was still meeting all my deadlines. I was still getting awards on my job. I was paying my bills. I was still taking care of my family. But inside, I was dying. Inside, like I said, I was drowning in plain sight, and no one seemed a what is it? I just didn't think they weren't equipped to deal with it.
Right. Yeah.
Because even when I reached out and said the words, guys, I feel suicidal. I don't think they knew how to take it because that wasn't how they saw me.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah,
there
I
was a
know.
point when one time even. And it's sad to think about this, but one day when I was in a really, really bad spot, um, I went to my husband, my boss. I even stood in front of all my employees and told them, but do you know nobody did anything? I'm not even sure what I expected them to do, only it was a cry for help that went unanswered.
Mhm. I think people just don't know what to do, because it's one of those things where if you haven't been there, you assume that it's just, well, okay, you just having a bad day, just don't think those thoughts. Just don't do that. And I don't, have experiences obviously with PTSD, but I'm curious as to what that feels like for you.
I guess the best way I can describe it is it's as if the way I describe it is drowning in plain sight. Just imagine walking down the street, past a body of water, and see somebody flailing in the water. Would you
Hmm.
jump in and pull them out? Or would you stand there on the sideline and just watch them? Would you at least throw a life preserver if you couldn't swim yourself? Well, what everybody around me chose to do was say, it's going to be okay, sweetie. Pat you on the back, pat you on the head, and keep it going. But there were times when you get to a point where you feel like there is nothing on the planet worth staying here for. And
Hmm.
even when you articulate that, the people around you may not be able to help you. And
Hmm.
that's when I had to get to the point, Darryll, where I realized nobody was coming to rescue me. I had to rescue myself.
Hmm.
And that's how I began to set up protocols that helped me navigate when I felt myself drowning, and also recognize the signs that put me in a drowning in plain sight situation. And I can tell you about that if you like.
Yeah, yeah.
And what I had to do was this. First of all, I know for me, I need to get my sleep. I know I need to take my medication. I know I need to not pretend like everything's okay when it's not,
Hmm.
regardless of how other people feel about it,
Right.
or if they can't handle it. I'm no longer concerned about other people's inability to handle my
Hmm.
mental issues.
Hmm.
And
We got to pause because that's a big one. That's a big one, and I want to go back to the medication too because that's a conversation that I think is helpful for some. Because I remember, them prescribing me to antidepressants and some anxiety medications and some stuff for pain too,
mhm,
and me being like, the first experience with it, it didn't really work, and while I'm here, we might as well just stay here. So, you
mhm,
know, I tried like two or three different medications, and
mhm.
I didn't like none of them. And then they were like, "Well, try this one." I was like, "No, see, I'm done. I'm done. I'm not about to just keep treating me like a guinea pig." And and that was my current understanding. But then, probably a couple years later, when I start getting bad episodes again, I revisited the idea, and she said, it's not that we're trying to treat you like a guinea pig. She said, it's just that everybody's body responds differently. And we just got to find what works for you. And so I ended up finding something that did work for me. And even I didn't really recognize it was my wife who was like, yeah, this is definitely helping. You're less moody. You have,
Mhm,
you don't have as lows as you,
mhm.
normally would. And so, this is helping stabilize a little bit. So, let's what was the medication journey like for you? Did you find it, the right one the first time, or
I wish I could tell you I did, Darryll, but see, the medication journey, I would start with this. It's not a one size fit all. It's not a one size fit all. You do have to, what I refer to as body hack, to figure out what works for you. So you will
Mhm,
be a guinea pig in the beginning because, like she said, everything doesn't work for everybody. But
mhm,
I had the added complication of that because of my medical issues, which are extensive. I had 8 different doctors prescribing me medication at the same time. So I was on
mm.
22 medications at one time,
Oh my gosh.
and nobody was talking to anybody.
Oh my gosh.
That was a recipe for disaster. It is but the grace of God that I sit here with you right now. When I finally got to the point where a very well-meaning, and her name was Mitzi, she worked at the hospital I worked at. She said, they're going to kill you if you don't get them to start talking to each other. And she sat me down and she said, you need to find out what you're taking, who's prescribing it, why they're prescribing it, and make them talk to each other.
Mm,
So I did that. And that was a game changer because then I stopped just blindly taking medication. I took responsibility for my health.
mm,
I looked up every medication, what the reaction was, and found out that some of that stuff was a cocktail for death. I
mhm,
don't know how I'm still sitting here. I should have died a long time ago.
mm,
But
yeah,
like I said, but for the grace of God.
right.
So with that, I began to work with my doctors and began to ask them to wean me off of the medications. I
Mhm,
asked them to take a combination medicine and holistic approach. I tried meditation. I tried acupuncture. I tried water therapy.
mhm,
physical therapy. I tried different medications, and I continue to try. I tried diet and exercise, and I continued to do all of that until I came up with a combination that works specifically for my body. And the combination that works for my body is meditation, exercise, intermittent fasting, um, medication, and lots of sleep. When I
Mhm.
do not sleep, I'm going to slip to the dark side.
Mhm.
So knowing that, I also had to put into some protocols with the people around me, whether they were in denial or not. I began to say, when I tell you that I feel like I'm drowning in plain sight, this is what I need you to do. I became specific about
That's
what I
good.
needed from the people around me.
That's
I
good.
put I put stickies on my wall that say, have you slept? Are you sleeping? You know, yeah, really. I mean, it sounds crazy,
Just remind
but
yourself.
it
Yeah.
was a reminder to myself.
All right.
If you find yourself holding pills, call this number.
Mhm.
That 1-800 number, the crisis hotline. No, I
Mhm.
don't have it memorized, but it's in big bold letters right by my bed.
Mhm.
So on July 26th this year, when I found myself holding a bottle of pills, I called that number
Mhm.
and reached out and got a guy named David who told me take your meds and get some sleep. Now, you would think I know that, but the truth is, when you haven't slept for 5 days, your brain doesn't work like it should.
That's true.
So
Mhm.
I needed someone to tell me to go to sleep and take my medication like a 2-year-old,
Mhm.
because at this time I was not functioning like an adult.
Mhm.
So you have to put the protocols in
Yeah.
place that will keep you safe. And then the other thing I did was I got delivered from people. I decided I was no longer going to walk in the shame of what is or
Mhm.
what was, because people's opinion never put a dime in my bank account and did not change my situation.
Mhm.
So I had to begin to say that I was no longer going to be defined by
Mhm.
my diagnosis.
Mhm.
Yes, I've been diagnosed with PTSD and MST, which is post traumatic stress disorder and military sexual trauma. But I was going to reframe my PTSD to stand for a plan to show up daily. And I wrote that on my wall.
I love it.
So my mantra is every day I plan to show up daily.
Mm.
And by showing up, I mean I'm going to exercise, I'm going to eat right to the best of my ability, and
Mhm.
I'm going to follow my self care protocol, which allows me to stay in a good, healthy mental space.
Mhm.
And I'm going to be honest with myself to say that some days I don't feel like I'm hitting on all cylinders. And
Right.
on those days when I don't, I'm going to ask for help.
Right.
And then I'm going to ask for exactly what I need, regardless of how somebody may receive that.
Wow. That's so good. And I want to talk about that a little bit. But before I start talking about other people and how they process those emotions, how they deal with it, and still being able to share, because I think that's just so important. And it took me years to learn that. But I want people to understand the severity of the issue. Obviously, if you're having suicidal ideations or you're battling depression, know that there is a number that you can call. Our team will put it on the screen. But let me share with you, for some of you who are like, is this really an issue? Suicide is actually the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. In 2018, 48,000 people, a little bit over that actually, died by suicide. In 2018, there were an estimated 1.4 million suicide attempts. And this
Wow.
is a preventable cause of death for the most part. So gotta calm down. Um, I'm on I'm only here because of the grace of God. Because
Mhm.
just like you, I've survived that darkness. And just like you, I was publicly successful
Oh,
and
absolutely.
internally failing.
Mhm.
And I said I did a live stream this morning. This is something that I say often, is I talk about the need to be vulnerable, because
Mm.
when I first was battling some of these thoughts, I would kind of halfway throw it out there, like, oh, I'm kind of down, but I wouldn't talk about how I was really feeling. 'Cause I'm an
Mhm.
athlete. We don't show weakness. We're not supposed to feel like that. I'm a man.
Mhm.
And I said vulnerability is actually the Batman signal for love. It lets people know that you need help. And I love how practical you've made this, because you said you let people know exactly how you need help, which I think is a wonderful tip. I'd love for you to talk about that, because it took me years to learn the lesson that you just shared on that. Some people don't know how to handle
Mm-mm.
when you say, hey, I'm this is how I'm feeling. And you said you had to learn how to share it, even though
Mhm.
it would be hard for them to handle.
Mhm.
Talk about that. Why can you share a time where you noticed that you were sharing your emotions and the other person, it was too heavy, too much for them? I would love to hear a story about that.
Yes. I actually have two very good ones with the two men that were closest in my life at the time. My husband and my director, my boss. Steve and Corey did not know what to do when I would tell them I was drowning in plain sight. And there was one particular incident when my child was young. I've never even said this out before. But I actually contemplated taking my child and myself out at the same time because I couldn't leave my baby here if I was going to be gone because I didn't want anybody to do nothing to him. And right before I called my husband and said, please come home. I'm in that bad place and this is what I'm thinking. My husband came home. He came home. He sat at the bottom of the bed and he looked at me. He talked to me for a few minutes and then he went back to work. And I remember thinking, I just told you I'm about to take myself and your child off this planet, and you're going to leave me in this house? Well, that
Mm,
pissed me off beyond belief.
mhm,
But then I called the VA and said, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm thinking. What can be done? I was put on hold, and then they told me to come in the morning.
mhm. Yeah.
I then told my child, if mommy ever tries to get you to drink anything, feed anything, they're probably little, they probably don't remember it. Don't take it, don't do it. You go to the neighbor's house. If mommy's acting funny, go to the neighbor's house. You understand me? Yes, mommy. And then I went to work the next day and told my boss. I expected to get fired or at least taken somewhere, but nobody did. They just said, well, they all called me Gunny. Gunny, we all have bad days, go back to work. And I went back to work. I cried that entire day. And I remember wringing my hands. But then I got pissed off because I'm thinking, wait a minute. Okay. I just told y'all what I told y'all, and nobody's going to do anything. Now it was about not just protecting me. Now it was about protecting my child because I thought, how could I even have that thought?
Mhm.
But now I wasn't self focused. I was focused on protecting my baby.
Right.
So what was I going to do to protect my baby from me?
Mhm.
And so I began to do that was the first time I really began to be doing research about the medication and all the things of that nature. And what it taught me was this is the people around you see you in a way. I'm the mover, I'm the shaker, I'm the go-to person, I'm the solutionist. Everybody comes to me for answers. They don't expect me not to have the answer to anything or any situation in life.
Mhm.
So for them, it was a hard push to even believe that I was not, as they would say, going through a phase.
Mhm.
But it was serious. So I got myself a new counselor. I That's when I first put in the protocol about putting wrote and if you came in my house right now, you can still see the handwriting scribbled on my wall that I left there as a reminder of that particular day. It was
Mhm.
October 12th,
Mhm.
1993, I want to say.
Mhm.
I mean, nope, not 93. Yeah, somewhere
Mhm.
around there.
Mhm.
Uh, 2003, excuse me, because my baby was little. 2003. Alex was born in 2000. And I wrote it on the wall. So I never forget that day. And every time I look at it, it's a reminder to don't lose control, to don't give up, to keep fighting, to keep pushing. The
Mhm.
worst part about it is, Darryll, I wish I could tell you I never had thoughts after that, but I battle with thoughts right now. People see me on the TV, they see me stacking the deck to my success and smiling and telling everybody how I just, I'm working to help people have well balanced life, which I do and will continue to do. But in the midst, there are days I am in this house curled up in a fetal position, crying my eyes out because the depression is so bad.
Mhm.
And then once I can get myself together, I can come out here and smile just like I'm doing today. But tomorrow is another day.
Mhm.
It is an everyday constant battle. And
Mhm.
nothing pisses me off more than those well-meaning people that like to tell me how, well, you just need to give it another day, give it to Jesus. Well, if giving it to Jesus will take care of it, and I love God, I am saved, set free, and delivered,
Mhm.
Holy Ghost filled, tongue talking, Bible toting woman of God. Okay, I got so much oil on me, I can slide from here to California. Okay, I will be the first one to tell you that God is a healer. There is
Mhm.
nothing God can't do. But what I am telling you is that this is a thorn in my side that I deal with on a daily basis.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's minute to minute. Sometimes it's day to day. Sometimes it's week to week.
Mhm.
But I will not deny the healing power of God. But what I
Mhm.
am telling you is that I am dealing with this on a regular, and somebody need to recognize that everything is just
Mhm.
not going to go away by prayer and fasting
Mhm.
and tongue talking and back flipping. Because if it did, this would be gone a long time ago.
Right. Right. A couple questions. Number one, what keeps you persevering? What keeps you motivated?
What keeps me motivated at this exact point in time is the desire to help prevent any more unnecessary silences, mine or anybody else's.
Mhm.
And the fact that in July, when I realized my marriage of 23 years really was over and it
Mhm.
was no turning back, and I had hit that bad spot once again,
Mhm.
I reached out and I joined something called the Be on TV Challenge and became the grand prize winner. And because of that, all these opportunities like talking to you today have opened up. But in the midst of that, a lady reached out to me and said that my voice mattered, that she got up and took care of her kids because of hearing me walk in my driveway on my Tell Yourself Tuesdays. I've had people tell me that they have sought mental health help because of my videos.
Mhm.
People have told me their deepest, darkest secrets and told me that my voice matters.
Right.
So, how selfish of me to not fight the battle
Right.
when there are people counting on me to show up daily and
Right.
just put a little brightness in their life. So I'm
Right.
motivated by those other people that don't have a voice, which is why I want to be the voice for the voiceless, the ones that no longer can lift their voices. And I want to help people that are struggling to find their voices,
Right.
find their own voices.
Love it. Love it. Um, one of the other things I was going to ask you, because you had said something that really, struck a chord, is, your faith and the battle of uh believing while still battling.
Mhm.
And how were you able to reconcile that? Because I know people who, when God don't take away their pain, when God don't heal them, when He don't take away that darkness they're struggling, how have you been able to reconcile with what you mentioned as a thorn? How have you been able to deal with that?
For me, it just simply comes down to you either believe him or you don't. My Bible tells me that I am more than a conqueror, that I'm the head and not the tail, that I'm above and not beneath. He says I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. He says his grace is sufficient for me. So either I believe it or I don't. And it didn't say that if my situation doesn't line up with the word of God, God ain't wrong. My situation is wrong. So I'm just waiting for my situation to
Mm-hmm.
turn around.
Mm.
Now, the thing I do know is this, is that I don't sit here by my own power. I sit here by the grace of God. I know the things that God has already delivered me from. And for whatever reason that He's self fit to allow this to continue, there must be a message for
Mm-hmm.
the madness.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm here to carry that message. So I have chosen to believe that God trusted me enough to carry this because He know I could handle the weight. I
Mm-hmm.
understand that I used to I have this weird thing. I like to study. I'm a lifelong learner. And
Mm-hmm.
I got hooked on foundations one day, and I found out that the taller the building, the deeper the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to believe that He's putting a foundation in me
Mm-hmm.
that's allowing me to sustain the weight
Mm-hmm.
of the ministry that He's placed on my life, so
Mhm.
that I can help let other people know that this too shall pass. See, I don't believe God sitting up in heaven going with his hair on fire, going, "Oh my God, did you see what happened to Brenda?" No, he's saying, "Look at my child. She
Mhm.
may be in pain. She may be hurting, but she ain't turned her back on me." And I refuse to do that, because if the opposite is to go, "Oh, God didn't do this," and what's the benefit of that?
Mhm.
There's something I like to tell everybody. Have you ever seen a yardstick?
Mhm.
I want the next time you see a yardstick, I want you to take a piece of tape and tape off 1 inch,
Mhm.
and then just look at that 1 inch.
Mhm.
Just can you picture that with me?
Yep, I'm with you.
Okay, now that 1 inch represents your life here on this planet. The other 35 inches and beyond represents eternity. In view of eternity, does that 1 inch and these light afflictions mean anything?
Mhm.
Because there's going to be a time when this pain in my body, this fogginess in my brain, it's not even going to matter.
Mhm.
So for me, my faith is what helps me even in the darkest of hours. Even when I was holding them pills, calling the crisis hotline, I
Mhm.
still knew God was God and he's always going to be God.
Wow.
And what I'm counting on is that there never be a time where I forget that, so that one day I cross that line. And I believe in God, I'm not going to do that.
Mhm.
But I'm also believing God that I will never, ever again hide in shame, because as a Christian, I'm supposed to have it all together. See, that's a lie from the pit. That's why people walk around here looking stupid now,
Right.
because we won't tell the truth that
Mhm.
even as a God fearing woman, you
Mhm.
can have mental issues,
Mhm.
but they don't have to have you.
Right. That's so good. That's so important to know. Man, you preaching now. But this is so helpful, and I know we're getting at our time, but I just your faith is inspiring, and I know people who've been through less and quit, and yet here you are finding a way to still have faith and deep faith and big hope, and
Hmm.
inspiring others, and I applaud you for that. I think one of the things I want to equip people to do is to have healthier conversations like this. What would your advice be to someone who is dealing with a family member that's depressed, suicidal? What would your advice be to that loved one?
I would say, take it seriously.
Hmm.
Don't take it lightly, because they may not be able to articulate, and that's one of the problems, is that oftentimes we just keep it inside because of the shame, because of the stigma, because there is no safe place
Hmm.
to let go of what is going on inside of us.
Right.
Create a safe environment, a judgment free zone that allows that person to say, "I'm hurting, I'm in
Hmm.
pain." That's what I would suggest, and
Yeah.
get them some help.
Yeah. I agree. I agree. And I'm gonna share with you guys link in the chat there if our team could drop that in. It's a YouTube video that me and my wife recorded. It's called Married to Depression. And
Mm.
what it is my wife sharing what it's like to be married to me, who, labeled clinically depressed, battles depression, and how, she has zero experience with that. Not that she's never felt down, but she's never dealt with that depression before. And so, she was very insensitive in the beginning. And even
Mhm.
though we got married after I had already survived suicide attempt, it was just something that was so far from her experience that and we
Yeah.
talked about that, and it was a helpful video. So that's another resource for you guys. This has been a phenomenal discussion. And I'm so glad that we were able to have it. Is there any last words or thoughts that you want to leave people with in regards to this subject?
I would say this subject, and all, I always tell people, my parting thing is this: life is choice driven. The decisions you make today will be the reality you live tomorrow. Choose wisely
Hmm.
and get some help.
So good. If someone's listening to this right now and they're like, man, this woman is inspiring, where can they connect with you, look you up, maybe see some of the previous shows you've done? How can they connect with you?
Yeah, you can see me on Instagram on Brenda the Solutionist, SOULUTIONIST. On Facebook at Brenda Warren. You can
Mhm.
check me out on YouTube under Brenda Warren. You can
Mhm.
check me out on Facebook on AMP Media Productions on my show, The Editor's Desk. So
Yeah.
I'm all over the place.
Love it. Well, I love that in the middle of your own battle that you're still able to have great faith, great smile, great joy. I'll kind of end on this note with, Tony Robbins. I heard him say when he talked about being abused by his mother when he was younger, he said, I've been to the darkest darks and the lowest lows so that I can help people reach their highest highs. And,
Absolutely.
you carry that torch and that mantle. So thank you so much
Thank you for
for
having me.
hanging in there and continuing and for being transparent. Thank you so much. This was refreshing for me to know that I'm not the only one. And I always tell people this: you can have kryptonite and still be Superman. And you, my friend, have kryptonite and you are still Superwoman. So thank you so much for
Thank
joining us
you.
today, guys. Yeah, you just show her some love in the chat. If this was helpful to you, go ahead and drop some comments there. I want to encourage you that if you're just now tuning in, make sure you go back and watch. We'll leave this up for you to listen to and share with other people who this could be a blessing to. Remember that we are promoting our book, Who Am I After Sports? I talk about my personal battle with depression and suicide and how the end of my sports career caused me to have to face these emotions. And just like Brenda mentioned, I was publicly a success as an athlete, but privately and internally was failing. And I talk about that struggle and what to do with it and how you can rebuild your life beyond sports and reach your highest potential and find your purpose. And so the good news, if you go to that link, you'll be able to access all of the bonuses that come with purchasing the book. And don't forget to leave a review, especially those of you who have already ordered your book, because that helps us get the message out there to more people who need it. I want to let you know that if you have not yet joined my text community, join my text community at 770-407-5177. I share free content. I communicate with you directly. I give you coaching and advice, and sometimes I'll do special promotions for the people that are part of my text community. I much rather prefer to text than email. So if you're like me, just send me a text. You can join our text community. I'd love to connect with you. Head over to secondchanceathletes.com, and I want you to join me tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because I have another special guest, Miss Sheldon, the CEO of IG Creative and the executive producer, host of This Is It Network. She has spent close to 2 decades creating, managing, executive, strategic, grassroots, and marketing campaigns for clients with an array from an array of various industries. She continues her commitment to communication and marketing and education. She's phenomenal. Entrepreneurship, marketing. She knows athletics. You are going to want to talk to this woman. She's an expert. So join me tomorrow, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Second Chance Live Show. Until next time, remember that your best days are always in front of you and never behind you. See you later.